morning, everybody. I could have started out this morning with your power has been restored. But because in all honesty, remember this, and Gary and I had this conversation before service started. You know, you possess all the goodness that is the divine at all times if you are only aware of it. So your power will be restored when you recognize that you got the power. That's what I'm talking about this morning. We never plan what the music is going to be in relationship to what I talk about, so it just kind of merges over time, and I'm so happy about that this morning. The power has been restored. My spiritual principle this morning is, let's talk about your true nature. Have you ever thought about exactly just who and what you are? You are a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe, having a human experience. It absolutely relates to the fact that God within us is transcendent, sometimes beyond us, and at the same time also immanent within us at all times as well. And if you just recognizing your power will be restored. Individual human beings, each one of us live in the spiritual universe. That's what we are. That is our connection to it. And there are times that we have experiences where we really understand that we are connected to this one divine presence that lives and rules within each one of us. My inspiration this morning comes from Ordinary Mysticism, Your Life as Sacred Ground by Mirabai Starr. Now, understand ordinary mysticism, the fact that there is this presence of the divine and the awareness of the divine. It's just not people who have written wonderful books or saints or sages. Each one of us is a mystic if you understand the power that is within you. And you understand the reference to sacred ground goes back to the story of Moses and God. And as Moses believes that he's encountering the burning bush and the bush is not being consumed, God says to him, take off your shoes because the ground you stand on is holy ground. Now, you can get lost in the point that that specific location was holy ground. But that's not it at all. Wherever his feet were, it's called sacred and holy ground. And if your awareness is there, every place you place your feet is sacred and holy ground. Now, Mirabai she says, this is her own testimony, that she grew up in a secular Jewish family who decided to become hippies and remove themselves from the patriarchal and religious society that they had been a part of. Now, she quit high school. She completed her GED, but she currently now has a doctorate in philosophy and world religion, and she teaches at the University of New Mexico. So you too can flunk out of school, get your GED, and earn your PhD. There is nothing about your past that limits your future but your own consciousness. And if you tap into your consciousness, there is nothing that has ever failed or turned or didn't go the way you wanted it to go that cannot go in a different direction, because with God, all things are possible. All things, all things. She's written over 20 books, and she said she never had an original idea about what to write about. People made suggestions for her. The first one were her students. She was teaching the mystics as a function of philosophy, and I remember when I learned them the first time, and I was transfixed by the experience as well. But her students said, this old language is not something that we particularly like or identify with. Why don't you update the language so that it speaks to us individually? And that was how her book started. And she's written all of these books just updating the classics in relationship to mysticism. But she loses her daughter at 14 years of age. And she loses her daughter on the day her most famous book, The Dark Night of the Soul, is released, a rewrite of the classic of St. John of the Cross. So I would say she has earned the title of mystic because she's lived a life that many of us have had to live. So my title this morning is Your Life is Sacred Ground. Your entire life. Every place you go, everywhere you are, is sacred ground if you recognize the power that is within you. I was in Athens. I was sitting in a restaurant on the top. The restaurant was on top of the hotel. And it was noontime, and it went into the dusk and when the sun was setting. And in the distance was a mountain. Beautiful, of course. I mean, you're in a lot of places, except for in California, where there are actually mountains and terrain varies. And so I didn't really pay it that much attention, but as the sun went down, the mountain lit up. And what I recognized when the mountain lit up is that it was the Acropolis. And on top of it was the Parthenon. And it was totally lit, and it was so beautiful. It was one of these periods that I was transfixed, that I was immediately in the presence of the divine. I could feel it, I know, and my entire body, every goosebump that I could have, and tears popped out of my eyes at the beauty of being in this place where the presence of God was so good that right in the middle of the darkness, there is nothing but divine light. And that if you can look unto the hills from where your help comes from, when you feel down and out and like you're never going to make it, if you can just look up, maybe you can overcome. But overcoming is a choice. In a distance was the most beautiful thing I think I have ever seen. Was it sacred because I was there, or was it sacred because I was aware? Aware. That's what it's all about. It's awareness. It's not the place, although there are some things that stimulate us. But if you tap into the divine because you take the divine with you in all places, any place that you go is holy ground. Overwhelmed in Athens, and most of the time overwhelmed here when the choir sings and when the music is going and the entire place just has a little bit of a roar and a little bit of a thump. There's just something about it that just warms my heart. I go, I know I'm with my people. I'm with my people who are making a joyful noise. That's all that's important to me. Culturally, sacred ground can be sacred simply because of the place or the location, and often it's associated with some element of history. We remember that something significant happened there, and so that place becomes sacred as a result of that. But there are many places that all of you have sought out, maybe even me, where you try to have this spiritual experience that other people have had. Any of you gone to Lourdes? You know, the pools of Lourdes or the Ganges, or gone to the Sphinx and the pyramids, or to Jerusalem or the Kaaba. Any place where you go where you feel that there may be this presence, that the divine kind of peeks through the veil, or maybe it's we peek through the veil. Is it awareness? I think it's all about awareness. I heard a story about a young child. The family had just had a new daughter born, but she had an older brother, just a little bit older. And the little brother was always trying to be around the baby. Now, most of you that have children, and I don't, that he just wants to be around his baby sister, right? That's just what he wants to do. But they were a little mystified by the fact that he always wanted to be around this kid. And so they had an intercom in the baby's room. I guess people do that to listen for their children. See, I don't know these things, And I don't ever need to know them, by the way. And so they're listening to the intercom, and what they hear is the little boy goes in the room to his sister and says, "Can you tell me what God is like? Because I've almost forgotten." I believe you came here as a mystic, understanding your connection with the divine, and your power will be restored if you just remember that you have that connection. This little boy is giving us a lesson that says, remind me of what I knew when I got here. And sometimes we have to be reminded that we knew it as well. Tell me what God is like. I can hardly remember. Can you remember what the divine is like? When is the last time you peeked through the veil and made that connection that is within you to the divine, to recognize that there's one power and presence that reveals itself in and through and around each one of us? It's only about a recognition, though, and awareness. It can be in a place and enjoy the place, travel. But if you don't take your intention with you, probably very little will happen. And if you took your intention to today, to every place that you are, you can experience the divine if you set your intention for that. Because it goes every place that you go. It's the mystic that intuitively senses the divine. Reality with a capital R. So our life starts out in the mystical, not the mystery. Not the mystery. We get taught the mystery, the mystical aspect of our life. And we understand that as it unfolds, it becomes this spiritual journey and pathway back to a recognition of what you came here knowing. I don't believe, these people that teach, you are lost from God and everything was original sin and you're totally disconnected and you got to find God. I came here with the divine in my life. You don't have it if you don't want to. That's up to you. But I am aware that the divine was there. In fact, my parents told me a story when I was an adult, when they start sharing things about your youth. And they said, we knew as a very young kid that you were having spiritual experiences, but you didn't understand. So they're having this conversation without me, by the way. And they didn't have engaged me in the conversation. They're talking about me behind my back. And so my mother says, well, what do you think we should do? And my father said, just leave him alone. If the Spirit started it, the Spirit will finish it. This is what we all need to understand. The work that has started in us, as long as we are aware and willing to recognize it, it will complete itself because it's not totally dependent on us. It's dependent on the divine that dwells within us. You are not in this thing by yourself. If you are in this thing by yourself, I feel sorry for you because the facts of life will take you down. You have to have a transcendent point to believe something beyond the facts. The news will take you down. You've got to believe something beyond it. The last person that gives you a call and gives you this very terrible news. I was sharing this morning at 9 o'clock, one of my colleagues at work called in an absolute panic, just screaming. And I realized who it was because the phone knows who it is. And I said, what's wrong? And she says, my best friend, her kid's in the emergency room there where you are. So I said, don't drive. Let me come get you. She said, no, I'm on my way. I said, oh my God. I started praying then because I could tell she was absolutely hysterical. I go to the emergency room and I see this family who've lost their 11-year-old. And my heart moved, but let me tell you how small the world is. Within 24 hours, Kyla sends me a text and says, we lost a cousin today. Here, people that I know that are a part of this congregation are related to this family. And so you think all I could say is I'm just grateful that I could be there to support people who are in trouble. I typically don't spend that much time in the emergency room, but I went down there then. And the fact that even in these situations, you've got to be able to make that connection with the divine because the facts of life will take you out if you don't have a belief that transcends beyond just the facts of life. Just the facts of life. Are you seeking a place where your awareness is that recognizes the divine that is absolutely in and through and around you at all times? She says, she writes in her book that every place you go is sacred ground if you recognize that it is so. And in Ordinary Mysticism Starr, this is her point. She says, we look for the exceptional and the special. And in all honesty, the divine is right in the mundane things of life. She calls it mundane. Just the average things that go on every day. But our awareness has to be there that we recognize that it is true. And her encouragement to us is to start looking for the divine in everything that you do, particularly when the situation is unpleasant. If not, you're going to go into the emotions of the circumstances rather than looking up to where the opportunity and the possibility of overcome actually resides. It is in these places that we have these flaws in our life that we recognize that we get the opportunity to look beyond. We embrace the ordinary, understanding that because we are there, it can be a sacred experience. I believe The Spirit and the divine is accessible to all, not just special people, unless I'm one of the special people. Now, they may have come and picked me up in the bus and took me to the special school, but that was called busing. It wasn't because I had any challenges. But I'm special just like everybody else. If anybody is special, we're all special. Not just certain people. We are all special. She invites us to, yes, you should celebrate. And if you don't think, Facebook will keep me on my knees. I don't interact that much with all of you, but I interact with every story or everything when somebody talks about the worthlessness of their life. I don't know these people, but I can't let that hang out there. I have to tell people you are priceless, even if you don't think you are, and no one has ever told you that you are, but you are priceless. And just this morning it happened, and I just went, how did I get this message? But then I'm thankful because, again, instead of saying, yeah, your poor, pitiful life, I'm just going to do my best to encourage them. Because I understand if you just look for the good, you will find it. It is everywhere. The divine gives us this insight, and the mystical path is open to all of us. It's not the mystery, it's the connection. It is the awareness of it all. And she gives us this recommendation. She says, you have to look for the sacred in your life. And she gives us 6 points to try to recognize recommendations of what we should do to find ourselves in a sacred and a holy place. The first one being, you need a sacred space. Remember last week we talked about the indigenous Episcopal priest who took cornmeal and just made a circle around himself so that he designated that this ground where he was is sacred and set apart for his experience. You need to find a place and create a sacred space. It needs to sometimes not have too much noise. As much as I like noise here, does need to be a place and a time that is quiet, like experiencing yoga or experiencing meditation, where you take some time not to talk, but to listen. Lord, if I could stop people from talking so much. Oh, I'm going to tell you, it is all I can do sometimes. Not to scream. Would you please shut up? And I understand that it's my opportunity to do what? To look for the divine and press through the veil myself because I am irritated. So I can either follow the irritation and get mad, upset, say the wrong thing, have to apologize later, or seek to understand and make my connection with the divine, because really, in all honesty, if I'm connected to the divine, I'm not paying you no attention, no way. I don't care what you say at that point. If I have made my connection with the divine, if my awareness is open, has the power been restored. She says you need to find some practice or some ritual that blesses you. She says either adopt one or develop one. Some people use beads. Some people, they use a sacred place. They light a candle. They have incense. Whatever works for you. Or decide and make up your own. Get you some cornmeal. Go out on the roof. Draw a circle around yourself if that's what speaks to you. Whatever speaks to you, seek that out. If you believe that you can say that this ground that I have designated is for me to recognize that the divine dwells within me. This is what the mystical life is about. It is about saying it doesn't make any difference what somebody else thinks about me. It makes a difference what I think about them. Don't miss that. It makes no difference what someone thinks of you. It only makes a difference what you think of them. Because that is your consciousness. The one thing I think the Spirit is always encouraging us to do is mind your own business, Rick. While you sitting there and you want to judge everybody else's behavior and say that they're wrong and that's not holy and that's not right and all those kinds of things, it's a constant reminder, mind your own business. It takes all your time, Ricky. It takes all your time, all of it, for you to mind your own business. Hint, 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 mind yours. Message to all of us. Before we speak, what do we have to deal with first? Before we open our mouth, before we judge, what do we have to reflect upon? This is being intentional about the spiritual life. Not just responding to everything, but setting an intention for your own encounter with something that is with you all the time. You think God didn't see it? Oh, yeah. You took it with you when you did it. But life is sacred. Every place that your feet are, your life is sacred if you are willing to acknowledge it. But are you aware that you were born just like that kid, with a full knowledge and understanding of what God is and what that relationship is, and you have been taught and educated away from believing in anything called imagination or vision? We're just taught to manage the facts. And I am here to tell you this morning, the facts are not enough. You must seek truth. And they are not necessarily the same thing. There are a lot of facts. The fact is, I'm bald. The truth is, I am sure in my resurrected body, I will have a full head of hair. I have ordered it already. I will weigh 150 pounds in my resurrected body. I will be at least 5'11", so that I can be at least as tall as my mother was. But well, why have we lost the wonder of it all? If I just look in the mirror, I certainly don't have a full head of hair. I'm certainly not 5'11". But why don't we live in the wonder? Why have we let the world remove all of the imagination and the intuition and the connection that we have with our higher self from us? So my challenge to you today is, and this should always be something you think about, what if tomorrow is your last day? One of the old saints wrote, you should always keep death before you. And I'm not being pessimistic at all. What I'm trying to say to you is, if you knew tomorrow was your last day and there was something you were going to say and do today because tomorrow was your last day, that's a calling for you to do it today. What are you waiting on? What do we wait on? We wait for the right time, the right motivation, rather than living life intentionally. So I invite you to recognize and become ever more aware of the mysticism that you were born with, an awareness of the divine that you had when you were born. And it is time for us to remember that we just have to remember, just like that little kid. Can you just remind me of what God is like? Because I'm almost going to forget. Have you forgotten? If you have, all you have to do is just turn inwardly, because it is always with you. And so it is.